Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. At the tender age of 6, Amal Berry's parents packed her and her older siblings and left their native Lebanon. They moved to the Detroit suburb of Dearborn, Michigan. Growing up as an ethnic American, she learned a lot about culture, identity, and herself. She parlays that lived experience into her leadership today at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Michigan, where she serves as Senior Director and Chief Diversity Executive. Amal, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So you came at a very early age to Southeast Michigan. What was that like for you?
It was quite the experience. I remember leaving Metro Airport, and the very first thing I saw was the Uniroyal tire, and I thought, what kind of cars do they drive here in the U.S.?
Big.
Really big cars, that's right. But it has, that symbol, really, of America to me was something that I continue to hold very dear to me, because that was my first impression of
Sort
America.
of everything's bigger than life?
Well, we're not quite Texas.
Okay.
But it was definitely different. People looked different. They spoke a different language. They ate very different foods than from what we were accustomed to. I always tell folks we lived in a very communal area in the city of Beirut, and so we lived in a high-rise, and everyone shared the outdoors together. And all of a sudden, we were back in the U.S. and we had fences and backyards that were solely ours, and so the difference was so intense
Really
for
serves
me
to
as a little
separate
girl.
people.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
So you had a hard time at school.
I did. First grade was quite an experience. I was actually labeled special education because I didn't know the language versus, I'm a foreigner coming into the U.S. not knowing how to speak English. And it wasn't until my father stepped up and said she doesn't have special needs, she just doesn't know the English language. So I spent a number of years learning English very quickly as a matter of survival.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you said that kids were sometimes not very kind.
Sure. Kids, while they're amazing, can be very brutal when you're different than them. And we came over in 1976, so it was not as populated with Arabs in the city as it is now, for example, in Dearborn. So there was one other young lady who was of Arab descent, and she stayed away from me because she had been assimilated and part of the culture.
Don't want any part of
that's
the,
right, and
the
she's
old
the
world.
foreigner.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm now with the
Exactly.
with the
So
white
I probably
folks.
spent my first year in first grade rather, was a very tough one. But by second and third grade, I either had the kids eating hummus and grape leaves with me, or had really found my space in a much more comfortable zone.
Because that was one assimilation or acculturation difference that your mom chose not to make. She didn't pack Wonder Bread in your lunches.
No, as a matter of fact, I begged my mother to pack Wonder Bread and bologna one day, and one day she did, and I remember opening my lunchbox and feeling so thankful that I was just like everybody else.
American lunch.
And then I took a bite, and at that point I couldn't eat it anymore and begged her to go back to the grape leaves and the kibbeh and the hummus. My parents were very rooted and continue to be rooted in our culture, and that really transcended to the kids. And so we continue to, today my kids, I sent them off to school with Lebanese sandwiches versus peanut butter and jelly. And it's something that we've carried very dear to our hearts.
And it turns out that's actually a really healthy way to eat.
It is. The Mediterranean diet is, you consume a lot of fruits and vegetables, a lot of natural products and herbs and oils. And so it is a healthy way to live, and something that we certainly maintained.
And not processed, no additives.
No, you want chicken noodle soup, we make chicken noodle soup.
Sure. So what are some memories from school growing up, and because at some point you became, you sound perfectly fluent as a speaker of English. What was the transition for you in terms of, okay, I don't fit in here so much, and now I do?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't know that I ever really wanted to fit in.
Okay.
I was very proud of my heritage, very proud of my culture. For me, it wasn't about becoming something different than I was, but rather helping others accept who I am. And for me, that was the big push. That was the motivator. So when I was made fun of, for my hair, for example, or what I wore, we were always dressed up. You went to school. It was a blessing to go to school, and so we were always dressed up in our best, our Sunday best, if
Okay.
you will.
Okay.
And kids don't take that too well, because you're different. So for me, it was about having acceptance versus assimilating, and
Sure.
and I think I continue to do that, in my life today, and to have people understand too, because half of the acceptance really comes from understanding.
Sure. And some of that is really just accepting yourself as like, however I am, even in a new environment, I'm really just fine.
Absolutely.
I think it's
Absolutely.
interesting that your classmate from similar origins
Yeah.
had chosen, no, I don't want to be different. I'm going to reject all of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a typical immigrant challenge. Who am I in this new context?
It is, and I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. It's just from what happens from within. For me, I was very comfortable in my own skin, despite all of the differences and the changes and the weird things I did as a young girl. Um, but to be comfortable in that space allows you to really define who you are.
Sure.
And we maintained our culture. We maintained the language at home. Religiously, we were, very spiritual people, and we maintained that throughout. And so I never felt I had to change. I had to adapt, certainly, but I never felt I had to change.
But it's not either or, it's both and.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, people want it to be an either or because it's about their comfort zone.
Well, and it's simpler.
It is. It is. Just accept our ways and we can all move on together. But, if you look at the United States, it was founded with so many cultures. It really is not a melting pot. It truly is a mosaic of beautiful cultures and languages and experiences that make us who we are today.
Sure, sure. When we were talking earlier, you said you grew up in a household where the parents expressed this ethos of failure is not an option.
That's
Can you
right.
talk about that?
That's right. So, I think in most Arab American homes, or most Arab homes really, education is extremely valued. Success is valued. Maintaining the family reputation and name is very important to the family. And so failure really wasn't an option. And it's not that you had to become doctors, which most Arab ones, families want you to become a doctor. But you had to succeed in whatever it is that life drew you to. And that continues, in first generation, second generation families as well.
Sure. Are your parents proud of what you do?
Oh, absolutely. My dad unfortunately passed away 5 years ago, but he was always very proud of what all of his kids did. And my mother continues to be really the source of drive for all of us.
So when you have to talk to your kids about what it is you do, what do you say about your job?
That's a great question. My kids are very special young people. They're very well adjusted. They have a real love for humanity. And so when I talk to them about the work that I do, I tell them basically I teach people to be nicer and to be accepting of other people that don't look like them. And I have to tell you, I learned so much from my children in the work that I do because they're not tainted by the rest of the world. And they see things as they truly are, without a lot of baggage attached to it. So I learn a great deal from my kids.
And at the ages of 8 and 10, they're really becoming very conscious of the world around them, and they're starting to understand things.
Definitely, and certainly as Arab American Muslims, being at this age, and I don't shelter them from what's happening in the world because they are citizens of the world and need to know what's happening.
Sure.
So every once in a while we'll have a conversation about what it means to be Muslim and how is it that those individuals on TV that they saw, how could they have done that in the name of Islam? And That's a really difficult conversation to have with your children who are very spiritual and believe in Islam and are true Muslims. Um, but we always, I always tell them there's good people in the world and there are bad people in the world, and they come in every shade, every size, and unfortunately every religion. And so those folks that are doing these horrific things are not true Muslims. And my kids will share that that sentiment and that conversation with their peers at school, and it's a really healthy dialogue that children can create that level of acceptance.
Now, because you don't cover personally, people may not guess that about you, just seeing you out on the street, but you said that your mother does.
Yes.
Okay. So what's involved in that personal decision?
So that's honestly, that's a conversation that I'll have one day between me and my maker. That is an individual choice that one can make. My parents have always taught us to be true Muslims in the sense of being living a Muslim life, and what that means is, the modesty. Which is why women cover. The modesty isn't just about covering your hair, but it's also about what you say and what you're willing to listen to and what you're willing to watch or see. So the modesty comes from all of your senses. And then one day, if I have that journey and that journey takes me down that path with my maker, then so be it.
There's the conversation. Sure.
Yeah.
Do you think so? I'd like to talk a little bit about your work at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Do you think that your childhood has really prepared you for this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, an individual's childhood has such a profound effect on who they become as an adult. And I think for me, really navigating through being an immigrant and becoming an American, and what does that mean, really helped me to understand sacrifice and racism and ethnic disparities and everything that comes with that. And has helped me prepare, really, I think, for my journey in life. And I'm very fortunate to be doing this type of work for Blue Cross and certainly in my career. But
so what are some of the initiatives or programs that you do at your job?
Sure. So we have a tremendous amount of effort from the leadership on down, where we actually just started a cultural competency training for all employees at Blue Cross, which we're very excited about.
Is this online training or is it in person?
No, this is an in-person
Okay.
half-day training. It really takes people out of their comfort zone
Okay.
and to become self-aware. You can never ask someone to be aware of others if they're not self-aware and comfortable with their own skin.
Absolutely.
Whatever their skin may be.
Right.
And so the training really concentrates on self-awareness and then awareness of others to find that understanding and acceptance. It's not just about appreciating people, because I can appreciate you, but I may not accept you for who you are. And our focus is really about understanding and acceptance.
Awesome.
And this is transcending to our members, because our members are so diverse that it's important for us as a company to be just as diverse and appreciative of who our members are and who our workforce is.
Awesome. We're going to have to wrap up in just a moment, but is there anything that you expect or hope for your two kids? And what are your kids' names?
Amr and Maya.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do you hope for them?
Honestly, like every mother out there, I hope they become really kind souls in this universe and appreciate others and accept others for who they are. And, I can't help it, right? I want my kids to grow up to be doctors as well. You got to keep the family tradition. But at the same time, as long as they're doing what they love and what they're passionate about, that's any mother's wish for their children.
Awesome. We're going to have to leave it there, but I want to thank you so much for coming by today.
Thank you so much, Alan, for having me.
Yeah, great. For folks who are watching, stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment with some tips on American culture, American slang, and a little bit of humor. What do you do if you're a working immigrant and a member of the sandwich generation? That is, you have children in school who need tutoring and shuttling about to music lessons or sports practice, but you also have aging parents who may not speak English well. Luckily, there's a growing movement of senior centers who cater to the elderly immigrant population. Take, for example, the Multicultural Senior Center of Snohomish, Washington. It holds regular meetings and activities for many of the area's senior newcomers. Korean seniors meet twice a week to enjoy karaoke in their native language, to play a familiar board game called jangi, or to savor a hearty bowl of a national beef dish called bulgogi. Experience has shown that immigrants who uproot later in life, especially those who follow working children to a new land, have a hard time adapting to the new culture and new language. These centers give them a chance to interact in their native language and support each other while their busy children and grandchildren engage in their daily routines. The center currently sponsors events for 5 language communities: Filipino, Spanish, Vietnamese, Korean, and Chinese. While the seniors can come to play games or socialize, they can also access professional services from social workers or talk to counselors regarding health or housing issues. And it turns out the Snohomish Center is inspiring more than the immigrant community it serves. Center Coordinator Connie Hallgarth remarked on how much respect immigrants show for their elderly. And that is something, she says, we can all aspire to.